Hola, senor. And that's as much Spanish as you're going to get out of me on this week's episode of the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. This is Monster Kid Radio, and I'm your writer, host, and producer, Derek M. Cook. And we are doing a luchador film today because it is the month of May. And while, we didn't do it at the beginning of the May, we've got to do Lucha da Mayo here on the show, which means we talk about luchador movies. And this week, we have a good one, we have an important one, and we have a fun one. It's all the same movie. It is Santo versus the Evil Brain, and I can't pronounce the Spanish language version of it. Check the show notes to see what it is. But it is the very first film featuring El Santo, and I'm excited to talk about it with longtime friend of the show, Robert L. Kelly, an author, a podcaster, a film historian, and a fan of these movies. He's also the man behind the Record All Monsters podcast and the Record All Monsters book. I'll make sure there's links to those in the show notes as well. Also in the show notes, you're going to find a link to this song. It is Godzilla. It appears on the EP Revolver by the musician Billy Veneno. Billy Veneno is a musician. You can find him over at billyvenenomx.bandcamp.com. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. Go check out the entire EP and let him know that Monster Kid Radio sent you. And I thought it was kind of cool. There was a track that he called Godzilla, and, we got the Record All Monsters guy on here who talks a lot about giant monster movies. It just felt like it fits, especially since he's based out of Mexico, and the luchador movies, most of them are set in Mexico and are shot in Mexico, although not this one. And we're going to talk about that later in the show. Also later in the show, we've got an encore presentation of a previous edition of the Famous Monsters of Filmland segment by Kenny, and it's awesome. It's actually part one of one of my favorite runs of the Famous Monsters of Filmland segment that Kenny's done for us in the past. I love it, and it was just fun to hear it again. So Kenny, thank you for sending that in, and thank you to Mark MATZKE'S for sending in his part 2 of the episode-by-episode breakdown of Ultraman Ace with his beta capsule review. And you know what? Why don't we go ahead and dive into that right now?
Trap! They're traps in a whirlpool of shrieking fear. From the most fiendish idea ever conceived by the human brain.
The Brainiac!
And it has a friend. She was beautiful, desirable, and not altogether human.
The curse of the crying women.
Together they will trap you in a whirlpool of horror. But if you live through it, you will never forget.
The Brainiac and the curse of the crying women.
Daughter of Horror. Here is tense, taut, chilled-filled drama that shocks you with hair-raising horror. Not one word is spoken on the screen. The strangest motion picture you have ever seen. Daughter of Horror.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. Surpass the Great Terrible Monster, the second episode of Ultraman Ace. An unfortunate construction worker gets pulled into a 2-meter-long silver egg, but no one believes the lone eyewitness. However, a similar object is detected flying over Japan, and Hokuto is called upon to investigate. Flying the TAC Arrow, He seems to destroy the UFO with a missile strike, and returns to base for an introductory party being held in his honor along with Minami. The festivities are cut short by the news that a jumbo jet has collided with a similar unidentified flying object, a disaster that puts a strain on TAC, as its members blame Hokuto for failing to destroy the object the first time. When they pursue the UFO, however, they learn that it disappears when attacked. The UFO lands on top of a high-rise building, and Hokuto, eager to atone for his apparent mistake, tries to detonate the object by himself. It doesn't work, and TAC can only watch helplessly as the silver egg reappears, resulting in the hatching of Kaiju Kamela King. Captain Ryu takes to the skies to fight the monster, but when the TAC arrow malfunctions, a crash landing seems imminent. That is, until Hokuto and Minami's rings flash, signaling the presence of Ultraman Ace. Episode 2 covers a great deal of ground in its 25-minute runtime, establishing Hokuto as a passionate, impulsive young hero whose inexperience shows through in this battle against Kamela King. To his credit, Captain Ryu is willing to guide the enthusiasm of his young recruits toward a positive end, identifying Hokuto and Minami as possessing the energy and intensity that TAC needs. Episode 2 scores bonus points for providing a succinct and fascinating backstory for Kamela King having to do with the destruction of Atlantis, and is punctuated by a fantastical transformation sequence clearly influenced by the popularity of the series Kamen Rider, which, when this episode aired, April 14, 1972, had been a pop culture phenomenon for almost exactly 1 year. For Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matzke reporting.
Gentlemen, we are witnessing a biological chain reaction, a geometrical progression of deadly menace.
It had started casually, insignificantly, as momentous events often do.
Look there. 2 points off the port bow.
The giant behemoth, the fire-spitting monster predicted in the Bible, its core a mass of lethal radiation. Rising from the depths of time, its strength enormous, its gargantuan ferocity a threat to London, to the world itself.
We must find a way of destroying this creature in one piece. Judging by the beast's size, I would say it was powerful enough to drive a battleship.
Of course, its tremendous electric charge is what projects the radiation. That's what makes the creature so deadly.
Well, have you any concrete suggestions?
Yes. First, block off the Thames.
Most blood-chilling science fiction shockers, Island of the Burning Damned, and Godzilla's Revenge. In this quiet setting, a tale of prehistoric horror is about to unfold with the science-baffling awakening of long-gone giants. Fighting amongst each other for the conquest of our planet. See the giant spiders spin their web of fear around their enemies. Godzilla's revenge knows no limit, no end, no stopping. See man's last attempt at saving humanity from destruction, and Godzilla's revenge. And on the same shot-filled program, Island of the Burning Dam. What is that strange noise and burning white heat that drove people to their death?
I have been convinced that this island has become the center of an invasion. The central landing point for beings from another planet.
What happens when an unknown power from outer space uses our radar signals as life-saving beacons to bring it to Earth to consume our energy? Island of the Burning Damned, an island desperate for help.
This is an encore presentation of the Famous Monsters segment from May 2nd, 2019. Hola, cabezones de Radio de los Niños Monstruos. Soy Kenny con un vistazo a monstruos famosos de la tierra del cine. To celebrate Lucha da Mayo, we are going to look at a 4-part series featured in Famous Monsters 121, 122, 124, and 125, which all came out in 1976, entitled Monsters from Mexico, Terror from Below the Border, which was written by Walt Lee. The editor introduced the first article with these comments. Godzilla and Company. You entreated us to show you all the terrors from Tokyo, the nightmares from Nagasaki, the horrors from Hiroshima, and we did in issue 114. We covered Mad Labs for you at your request. At your behest, have done our best on Lugosi, Lon Sr. and Jr., Lee, Cushing. We've gone to bat on vampires, and our mettle has been tested on our coverage of robots. Now, in a 2 or possibly even 3-part feature that will be referred to for years to come as the definitive Mexican monster movie guide, we bring you the results of 20 years of research by the celebrated creator of the legendary reference guide to fantastic films, Walt Lee himself. Walt takes over and briefly mentions the 1934 Phantom of the Convent, which will be featured at the 2019 Summer Monster Bash, and 1952's The Resurrected Body, before giving a full synopsis of the first luchador monster movie from 1956, The Body Snatcher. He then continues with a look at the Nostradamus series, which was a Mexican serial that was converted into a 4-film series which features Herman Robles as Nostradamus, who is a vampire, not a prophet. Before the next synopsis, Walt had this to say about Mexican monsters. Many of the monsters in Mexican horror films of the last dozen years or so have been patterned after characters in the Universal films. In many cases, the mask made by Don Post based on Universal's monsters have been used with various additions to complete the costume. Sometimes the names of the characters have been slightly altered. For example, the Frankenstein monster has been called Frentenstein, Frankenstein, Frankenstein, Frankenstein with a QE, and Frankenstein. He next reviews the film Frankenstein, the Vampire and Company, which is an unofficial remake of Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. He continues with a brief look at 1962's Macabre Path, which features vampires, 1964's Adventure at the Center of the Earth, and from 1966, Dinosaur Island, which features footage borrowed from Hal Roach's 1 Million BC, and that ends the first part of the series, a 9-page article with 16 photos. Hasta luego, amigos!
Life has many strange secrets.
And none is stranger than the curse of the blood ghouls. In the dark of night, they leave their tombs to satisfy their need for blood. Because these demons of the undead can exist only by ravishing the living.
Let me go.
With abnormal powers of love, they enslave the unwary.
Don't let her
go. Leaving on them the horrible telltale fang mark of the vampire. Life-devouring monsters in human form. They can be anywhere, everywhere.
Louise!
No one is safe. Only by destroying them will a town gone wild with terror and fear be free of the curse of the blood ghouls.
Nothing can strip your nerves screamingly raw like the diabolical Dr. Z and his doubly diabolical daughter. How many thrills can you take? Warning, this picture is for people with nerves of steel.
Get rid of her right away. The sooner the better.
I'm leaving here and Nadia's coming too.
Too late now.
Have something you'd like to share with Monster Kid Radio? You can email the podcast at monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 360-524-2484.
I am Dracula, and I bid you welcome to the podcast devoted to the classic, and sometimes not so classic, genre cinema of yesteryear. And I offer you this warning. Sometimes Derek and his guests get excited, and they may spoil a movie or two. You know how excited Monster Kids can get sometimes. If Monster Kid Radio spoils a movie for you, do not come whining to me. I cannot stand whines.
Well, Monster Kid Radio listeners, you know I cannot let the month of May go by without getting some luchador action in. Got to talk about our favorite men in masks. And we're going to talk about, I think it's the very first, and my guest will correct me if I'm wrong, the very first Santo film. Is that right, Mr. Rob Kelly?
That is right, Derek. It is Santo versus Evil Brain, el cerebro del mal.
Santo versus the Evil Brain. 1961, and it wasn't even shot in Mexico.
No, shot in Cuba, right before Castro walked into Havana.
Wow. I didn't know what I was in for. This was a first-time watch for me. It's not one I had seen before. I thought maybe it was, but this was something totally different. I am used to, and I think I prefer, I'm going to use the word sillier. I don't mean that negatively, but I prefer the more kind of silly luchador movies. You know, where they're fighting monsters or Frankenstein's daughter, Dracula, or going back in time and fighting mummies. I like that stuff. Those are my favorite luchador movies, especially once they're in color. This one is not. This one's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's some mad science stuff, I suppose, to kind of push it over the edge of reality, but this one's a little bit more straightforward spy action movie, kind of.
Yeah. I don't even think there's wrestling in this.
Oh, my.
Like, there's not a bout. Like, there's still action, but there's no in-the-ring wrestling for Santo.
You're right. I didn't think about that at all. There are no wrestling matches. We do see him, getting into fights and doing some wrestling moves, kind of, as much as he can outside of a ring.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Yeah, there are no matches in this. Huh.
Yeah. I have a rule on my letterbox with Santo movies.
Okay.
Santo movies start at 5 stars, and they have to do things to lose the stars, right?
Really?
Yeah, that's my general rule with Santo movies. I did like this one. It's not my favorite. It's not the most fun. It's interesting, mostly academically, to see where Santo started as a film star. It got 5 stars because it's a Santo movie, but it didn't excel at any of the things I want a Santo movie to do. But it's still fun.
Is Santo your boy? Is that your guy?
Santo is my boy. Santo is my favorite of the of all the Mexican wrestlers, all the luchadors. And last Lucha da Mayo, we watched one of his last films.
That's true.
And so here we are now talking about his first. And just the difference in him as a performer, I think, is one of the most interesting things about it. He's a little stiffer here in The Mystery of the Bermudas. He's the clear leader of the group.
Yeah.
And in this one, he is taking a back seat to not just the police, but a wrestler created for the movie.
I loved him.
He very much like a prototype for the Santo Blue Demon team-ups. In terms of the relationship, the Santo would take the incognito role kind of in those.
Now, he would go on to do other luchador films and other movies as well, of course, but he'd done some other Santo films and even wrote Santo versus Frankenstein's daughter, the person who played that character, Fernando.
Yes.
I apologize. I can't even roll my R's, so I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of some of these Mexican names. Oces? Fernando Oces?
Yeah, you got that.
Okay. All right. Good.
Fernando Oces.
But he wrote Santo versus Frankenstein's daughter, which I really enjoy.
It's my favorite one.
Really? Well, your favorite? Okay.
Yeah.
But he also appeared in a number of other Santo films as well.
Just on that one, how could a movie where Santo fights and then befriends a Frankenstein monster named Ursus not be my favorite Santo movie?
I mean, you got a point. You've got a point. He also appears in one of my favorite luchador films that does not have Santo, and that's The Champions of Justice.
Oh, and that's just a fantastic movie.
Champions of Justice, I mean, the Avengers of luchador movies. I love it. So much so that we're going to be talking about that next week with Matthew Rashley. So stay tuned for that, listeners. So I turned him on to luchador movies just recently.
Am I allowed to listen to it too?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's just said the listeners.
Hey, look, I assume you listen to the show. I do. But even if, yeah, whatever. No, I just turned him on to these luchador movies, and it's been so much fun because I get to see him experience all the emotions that I had when I first started really getting into these luchador movies. And it's fun to kind of remember the pure glee that I had when I realized there were these movies that presented this reality in which characters running around in tights and no shirt and a mask are taken completely seriously as secret agents, super spies, scientists, whatever. And I just love that world. I want to live in that world.
Yeah, it's Adam West Batman logic.
Yeah, that's exactly something he said to me in a direct message back and forth on Facebook. It's like, this is Batman. This is 1967 Batman. I was like, yes, it is. And it's just as awesome. So, but this one's a little bit more straight-laced. This one, I don't know if they're still trying to figure out the formula. It's not the first luchador movie. You know, Santo wasn't the first luchador film performer.
He was actually kind of late to the party.
Yeah.
And then wound up dominating it once he got kind of his foot in the ring.
I like Santo a lot. I think I've made it pretty clear, though, in the past. Mil Mascaras is my guy. He's my favorite. I like Mil a lot. But, Santo is awesome. Blue Demon's awesome. I love them all, really. I can't pick one,
Yeah.
So this one's a little bit more straight-laced, and Santo is a little bit younger. Towards the end of his career in films, he's putting on a little bit more mass. I'm not going to say weight because he'd still, whoop me. But he's been a little bit more size, either from muscular stuff from getting older, or he's just able to eat better because he's making more money.
Yeah.
He's putting on more size. But this one, he seems a little bit more young. And now that you brought it up earlier, I kind of wish we could have seen him in the ring in this one, just to kind of see a younger Santo flying around the ring.
Yeah, because so many of the ones that focus on the wrestling are from like the mid-70s onward.
Yeah.
And so he's established at that point as a film star, as a wrestler. At this time, I think he had just switched over from a ruler to a face in his career. So he was just now the good guy. There is a kind of unease, I feel like, on his part.
Still trying to
parts of the film. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I see that, still trying to figure things out a little bit. And, I don't know what the environment was like in pre-Castro Cuba shooting this movie.
With the rebels on the doorstep of Havana.
Yeah.
Like, it was...
Who knows? Like I said, though, even though this is kind of a straight-laced movie, we still get some of the fantastical, because you've got a mad scientist, there's brainwashing happening. In fact, a big chunk of this movie, Santo is on the side of the bad guys because he gets brainwashed pretty early. The masked one, as they call him in the banned subtitled version that I watched, he gets brainwashed and he starts working with the enemy, and it's El Incognito that has to inject him with an antidote.
Right.
Bring him back around to the other side.
The first scene of the movie is Santo getting overwhelmed by 4 guys in an alley.
Yeah.
And that's something that would have never happened in a later Santo movie. It might have looked grim, but then he would flip one of them over into a trash can and make his escape or whatever. No, he gets caught, he gets cornered, he gets beaten, and then brainwashed.
That's it. He's the bad guy now. And you're right, this would not happen to Santo in later films. There are even movies starring multiple luchadors where Santo shows up at the end just to save the day.
Yeah.
And that's it. He happens to have the magic gun or the magic bullet or the whatever, and he still fights all the monsters that Blue Demon and Mil Mascaras couldn't beat. It's kind of refreshing to see Santo get beat up a little bit and to see him kind of play both sides a little bit.
Well, I think so too, again, because it is so different from his later films. And again, he's just coming off being the heel.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to have him be on the bad guy's side for a little while, because that's what his audience may have been unfamiliar with heroic Santo at this point.
And I'm not really sure what the target audience was for this either. It was produced in Cuba by a Cuban film production company. A few other people were involved as well, but I'm not really sure who the target audience was for this either.
I know during the last days of Batista's regime in Cuba, they were trying to get more films made there.
Okay.
Because they thought, we'll inject some more money into the economy and stuff. So I think that's probably why we got it made in Cuba. I think that they were general audience fare. I mean, I think luchador movies were almost always general audience fare. Like, even the very silly, fun ones were family movies.
Well, and Santo was pretty clear that he wanted his films to be accessible by all ages. There's the one that some nudity was shot later and then inserted into the film, and he had an issue with. So yeah, there is that story as well. To back that up, I think Santo was very aware of that and his image overall.
Yeah. I have the Indicator Blu-ray here with me.
Okay.
And it has this wonderful, the audience can't see it, wonderful picture of Santo with a Tommy gun.
I love that. That's a great image.
It's terrific. But yeah, it's so different. And then to think about the progression from this to Frankenstein's daughter or with Blue Demon versus Dracula and the Wolfman.
Yeah.
Where he fights Dracula and a disco werewolf.
Which I love. It's so silly, but I love it. So we've got mad scientists brainwashing people. They are trying to get a formula for a cell disintegrator.
Yeah.
And, the story's not very deep, but these movies never are. That's not a dig. That's just an observation. They're not very complex plots.
It's a popcorn movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a popcorn movie. You throw this on, you make some popcorn. One of my favorite parts of the whole movie is near the end when they've cornered the bad guy in is it a hotel? Where he's holed up. Santo and Melun Cognito are standing behind the police officer who's on the megaphone saying, "Hey, you should give up and come out." They're just standing behind him like the enforcers. Just there's still that absurdity in it by the very nature of having luchadors as your protagonists.
Yeah. It's so hard to explain them to people who've never seen them before. This unreality, this absurdity, this world that they happen to inhabit.
I think the best way to explain it is there has been a murder, right? And like in all the TV shows and stuff, the cops have a guy they go to when they're stumped.
Yeah.
Just so happens that this guy is a professional wrestler and wears his work clothes around most of the time. If he's not wearing turtleneck sweaters with suit coats, that's it. What if Sherlock Holmes was a Mexican wrestler?
Well, now I want to see that movie.
That's it.
That's basically it. And Beth has finally got me watching the BBC production Sherlock from a few years ago. I'd never seen it before. I'm enjoying it, kind of going through it with her, and she really likes it. And I know Tom Doffel, friend of the show, is a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, just pretty much every iteration of Sherlock Holmes. Now I want to see Sherlock in a luchador mask, and next time I watch an episode of Sherlock with her, I'm going to try to decide, do I want Watson or Holmes to be wearing the mask here?
I think Watson would have to be the like the hype man, the straight man. And Sherlock, he's got the mask. And if they could work the Deerstalker into the mask somehow.
I've seen luchador masks. I watch a lot of professional wrestling, a lot, mainstream and indie stuff. And I have seen luchador masks that have more than just a mask covering, whether it's a big tongue sticking out like Psycho Clown or, the headpieces or whatever. He's not a luchador, but Curry Man had a plate of curry on his head. So yeah, who knows?
I have to ask now that you bring up indie wrestling. Are you familiar with Luigi Primo?
Yes. Yes, I am.
The guy.
Luigi Primo. It's the pizza guy, right?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
It's so fantastic.
I actually had it fell through because of scheduling, but I actually had him booked as a guest on Record All Monsters at one point.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Is he a fan of kaiju flicks?
I don't know. I just reached out to him, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Oh man, no, I saw him on a couple episodes of AEW programming and thought, who is this guy? It can't be just some random dude. And I did some research and started seeing clips of his stuff. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Greatest gimmick in the game right now.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, there are some good gimmicks out there right now. But Luigi Primo, that's fantastic, dude.
I'm so upset that it did, and it was nobody's fault. It was just one of those things that didn't work out.
Was he like monster movies? I don't know.
I reached out to him because I thought it was cool.
What would you have talked to him about?
Like top 10 fight scenes or something. I don't know. I was flying by the seat of my pants. So.
Oh man. Well, to kind of sort of bring it back, but not really, and staying within your wheelhouse. Have you watched any kaiju big battle wrestling?
I have a little bit.
Me too. It's pretty crazy.
It's fun. I was, and I just had the TV on, and it was like 3 a.m, and I came downstairs to get some water, and we'd left the TV on for the dogs. And that's what was on, and I wound up staying up and watching the rest of it. I don't even know what channel it was on. I'm just like, man, am I dreaming this?
Yeah.
And I found out it was a real thing the next day. I woke up and looked it up.
Like, what am I watching? What is this? Yeah.
I literally thought it was a dream.
Listeners, look up Kaiju Big Battle on YouTube. There are clips, and your life will never be the same if you've never seen it before. And I promise you, you're not dreaming. You're not dreaming. But anyway, that's what I want. I want more luchador stuff out there, though. And I know there are luchadors in the mainstream, promotions now. I already mentioned AEW. There's a lot of luchadors that work for AEW right now, and they've got partnerships. I think they still have a partnership with CMLL. In the past, they've had partnerships with AAA. So they do work with a lot of the luchadors. But I want more luchador media. I want luchadors fighting crime. I want luchador medical dramas. Do I? Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
Luchador stuff, I want to see more of that. I want to see the cops calling their wrestling consultant, their luchador consultant.
I mean, like,
solve the case.
Even just like a one-off episode of NCIS or something where they're like, I think we're going to have to reach out to a different kind of expert here and just play it straight. Just play it straight down the middle.
Well, and that's the best part, is in all of these luchador movies, they all play it straight. Nobody bats an eye at the fact that a guy who's topless wearing a silver mask is working with the police. Nobody bats an eye and thinks it's odd. It's just, hey, Santo's working the case this week. And that's what I love about this movie. This one even plays it a little bit more straight than the others because there isn't that level of kind of goofiness to it. It's just, Santo's working with them now,
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't really given this movie a lot of, we haven't really talked about it too much. And I know we don't do a lot of plot synopsis and things like that, but the bottom line is cell disintegrator. There's a mad scientist who wants it. There's a bunch of lying and double crossing going on. There is a young, pretty woman involved, but there's no romance between her and the luchador, really. Actually, she's attached romantically to somebody else. And that was interesting because a lot of times with these movies, you'll have the young woman be attached to romantically luchador heroes.
Well, I know specifically in Santo's movies, there's like two phases. And the phase one movies are things like this, the one that was on Mystery Science Theater, I think, versus the Vampire Women, Treasure of Dracula, where in the Wax Museum, it operates by what I call fairy tale rules or folk hero rules. Folk hero rules, that's what I call it.
Okay.
Where you have a situation, it's like the story of Hercules and the cart, right? This guy's walking along with his cart, and the wheel gets stuck, and he can't pull it himself, and he's about to give up. Hercules shows up, gets the cart free for him, right? This is the formula for like most kaiju movies, how they use Godzilla. There's a situation, and then we have the outside force, and the outside force that acts on it is the hero. It's what we're here to see. We're here to see Godzilla stop the bigger monster. We're here to see Santo stop the crime syndicate. But for whatever reason, the filmmakers don't trust the audience to be able to stay with the character as your perspective character, which changes with the Santo movies later on. But in the first block of his, especially, you can generally think of it as the black and white ones, he is the hero, but not the protagonist.
Okay. I like that. I think that's a really good way to describe them and break them down. You're absolutely right. Now, when we get to like the big team up movies and things with like Blue Demon and Mim Oscars and all that, they're usually the heroes.
Yeah, they're the perspective characters.
Yeah.
And the narrative protagonists.
Listen to us talk about a Santo movie, talk about like character perspective and these big words like protagonist and antagonist.
Well, it's but it's relevant.
Drama, it is. It is, and it's one of the things that I love about pro wrestling is that there is a drama there. Once you understand the rules, there's a lot of really interesting storytelling things you can do, and you can do that with these luchador movies too. And they might be most known for like the monster stuff and the silly gimmick stuff and all that. But you also have like Mil Mascaras' first movie was not a fantastical thing. It was an espionage spy flick.
Yeah.
The early Santo films, yeah, there's a touch of it, but it's mostly a spy or thriller or espionage movie with some mad science stuff, but nothing that would be out of place in like a James Bond movie of the era.
Right. Well, and this is almost like a crime melodrama with a sci-fi element.
Yeah. It does have what a lot of the Luchadors movies do have, though. You know, even though this one's kind of the very beginning of Santo's cycle anyway, it does have the random dance musical number.
Oh, yeah.
They go to the club and they've got all that, which was a trope of a lot of these early Mexican movies from this era.
Well, and that's part of, you know, Mexican fantastic cinema had been kind of suppressed after the 30s. And it's very focused on realism. And so that's a lot of the way kind of horror and fantastic elements came back into Mexican cinema was through luchador movies. The guy who you need to look up, you, the audience, listeners, Abraham Castillo Flores.
Okay.
He programmed this box set for Indicator, the same company that put this film out, called Mexico Macabre. Mexico Macabro, I think. I have the lobby cards from the movies that were featured in it up there on my wall.
Oh, is that the set with the Brainiac?
Yes, that's the one. He explains how a lot of this happened and how the tradition of like Mexican Gothic film was briefly lost, and it kind of snuck back in through luchador movies before luchador movies overtook the entire horror genre for Mexico for some time.
Okay.
And I think he was involved in this set too, minimally.
That is a set that I've been eyeing for myself. I love the Brainiac, even though I've never talked about it here on the show. Someday I will. But the Brainiac is fantastic. The Witch's Mirror, another really solid flick. And I think I've shown both of them on the Twitch stream when I was doing that on a regular basis. Maybe I'll bring that back and program some Mexican monster movies at some point. But those are some really solid films. Black Pit of Dr. M, I don't think I've actually sat down and watched start to finish. I keep meaning to.
Yeah, it's a great set. All four films are fantastic. Indicator also put out individual discs of Fantasma del Convento, the Ghost of the Monastery.
Oh, yeah, that one's good too.
And the first La Llorona film. That one is, I think it's the weaker of those two, but it's still a tremendous film. Yeah, Indicator's killing it with these Mexican genre box sets.
Well, I would recommend them myself. I don't own any of them myself yet, but I would. Doesn't mean I don't want to, because I've heard nothing but really good things about them. So I'd love to get my hands on them if I could. And if you've got them, hey, call them. Let me know how good they are. Let me know if Robert's on the right track here. These sets look amazing. Just the special features and everything look fantastic.
I think Indicator is also doing Santo releases of the films in the VCI box set from a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. Now that I do have the one VCI box set. That one I do have. It was sent in by a listener.
I love the new dubs on that, partly because it's nice that it's the same cast going from film to film. So like that you have the same voice actor for Santo.
Yeah.
Through all of them.
Keeps it consistent.
Yeah, I do wish they had the option for the Spanish language version, because depending on the day of the week or what I had for lunch, I might prefer to watch it in Spanish or with the dub. But now that Indicator is putting those, I think, 6 films out individually, and I think with the Spanish language version.
I think it's a matter of what kind of rights, who's got the rights to what, the language.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think VCI, they're a more budget-focused company.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have the resources Indicator does, I don't think. Their Santo set, I give them full props for. I mean, they have the David Wilk commentaries and intros. They took it seriously.
And I appreciate that. Look, not just the Luchador movies, but a lot of these monster movies that we talk about here on MKR, the kaiju films you talk about, it'd be real easy to just kind of like joke on and goof on them a little bit. Because really, they can be a little cheesy. They can be a little silly, a little low budget. But we don't care. We love them so much that when we take them seriously, it makes them even better, I feel like, when they're presented in a more serious light. Because it allows you to see more than just the silliness or the cheesiness. Been thinking about that a lot lately. That's how, yeah.
I'm a big advocate of what many people consider to be the worst Godzilla movie, Godzilla's Revenge. On Record All Monsters, our longest episode is dedicated to Godzilla's Revenge. It's 90 minutes long, and an hour of that is the essay segment of the show. Wow. In my book, it's the longest chapter. In our one Amazon review of the book that someone wrote out, which was 3 stars, and he says just short of very good, but he draws attention to how much detail and research was done on that particular essay.
Nice.
I needed to advocate for that film. And I feel like with this one too, because it's not my favorite Santo film. I don't think it's the best Santo film. I don't think it's even like a prime example of a Santo film. But to see where the phenomenon started, right? It's like the Werewolf of London to the Wolfman.
Yeah.
Like, this is the idea, this is the prototype, it's going to change and evolve from here. But we don't get that without this.
And for that reason alone, I recommend it, obviously.
Yeah, I still absolutely recommend it. If possible, this is a good entry point, because you have that kind of, it's more of a straightforward drama, crime drama, that just happens to have, a shirtless man in a silver mask shooting a machine gun. That's a little easier to buy than the police saying, "Oh, we don't know how to handle vampires. Better get Santo on it."
Better call Santo.
Yeah. And I think the police even reach out to him in this one because he was involved with it. And then was working for the big.
And it's not just him. Incognito gets involved as well to help him out. And just it's so good. It's so fun. It's popcorn movies, whatever you want to call them. I don't care. I just call them awesome. I don't know what else to say about the movie at this point other than obviously go see it.
Fantástico. Muy bueno.
They come out of the darkness to take over your soul, to eat your flesh, and make you one of the living dead. Zombie is about to begin, and you will eat it up.
It's got my arm!
Zombie. We are what they eat. No one under 17 admitted.
Get out of here! Go!
Well, you just heard he and I talk about a luchador movie. If you want to hear him talk about kaiju movies, you can check him out over at his podcast at Record All Monsters. If you want to read what he has to say about kaiju movies, check out Record All Monsters, the book of the essays from the podcast, available on Amazon as both a Kindle and Undead Tree edition. Undead Dead Tree. It's a print book. You can pick it up that way as well. But if you need even more Robert Kelly in your life, there's something coming. And he's not coming alone. I don't know where I'm going with any of this at this point. Why don't you take over?
What's the expression? Misery loves company. But so does unbridled joy and bafflement and befuddlement. And Derek and I have been talking behind the scenes for a little while now about a mutual love of the zombie films of Lucio Fulci, who, if he's a little bit outside the Monster Kid Radio wheelhouse, just I think because of the level of violence that is sometimes in the films. But he's a very, on one hand, bombastic filmmaker, and on another hand, thought-provoking filmmaker. And I've just, from his zombie movies, spiraled out into his broader oeuvre. And Derek and I were talking about Zombie 3, one of his later films that was taken over by the guys who made Troll 2.
Oh, wow.
So we're announcing right now a a co-production of MKR and Record All Monsters, a mini-series called Looking at Lucio, 10 episodes. We're going to be going back and forth between a zombie movie and an earlier genre work by Fulci. And we'll get into some of his career and life and just the weirdness around him as a filmmaker, kind of using the zombie movies as our entry point.
Right. I think as fans of genre film, that's the easiest way to go about this. He did do a lot more. Sure, we know him for Zombie. We know him for all the other horror flicks that he's done, but he did Westerns, he did fantasy, he did drama, he did all sorts of things. And I'm excited to learn more. I am pretty limited with my Lucio Fulci knowledge, limited almost only to the zombie films.
Which are fantastic.
Yeah.
Derek wrongly believes that Zombie is not the best zombie film made in the 70s. But that's okay, I forgive him.
Hey now. In some markets, I would agree with you, because that's the name they gave Dawn of the Dead over in Italy. So, I think you're right.
Well, I think we can all agree that a movie named Zombie that came out in the late 70s in Italy and other places, maybe under different names.
They love changing their names.
But we are going to look at that. Right now, we're slotted for 10 films, 10 episodes of this miniseries. We'll be looking at Zombie, his first spaghetti western, Massacre Time, City of the Living Dead, or more notoriously known as The Gates of Hell, a historical drama that he felt was his best film called Beatrice Cenci, The Beyond, which is my personal favorite of his films, Don't Torture a Duckling, which is a giallo that is my second personal favorite of his films.
Oh, okay.
House by the Cemetery, the last of his Gates of Hell zombie trilogy.
Should be barely a zombie movie at this point. It's like it's in there because the producer said do it. But we'll talk about that.
The Psychic, or Seven Notes in Black, which is kind of enjoying a renaissance thanks to things like it's available on Tubi right now, and people are saying, "Oh, this is a tight little thriller," and it is. And the notorious Zombie 3, which I mistakenly used to introduce my wife to the work of Lucio Fulci. It was an accident. I want to slot in one of his fantasy films, but that 10th slot keeps switching either between Cat in the Brain, which is kind of a retrospective on Fulci himself that he directed, and his Conan the Barbarian riff, Conquest.
Oh boy.
Which I love dearly. MKR, and Record All Monsters too. We generally try and keep things family friendly. These films aren't. But if you are a mature adult person, watch them along with us. We're going to have a good time. We're hoping to start getting episodes out in June to coincide with Fulci's birthday.
I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, my Fulci knowledge is restricted mostly to the zombie stuff because of my mail-order zombie background and that sort of thing. I have seen the Gates of Hell trilogy films. I've tried watching Conquest multiple times, and I end up, I don't know, it just doesn't hit it for me. But by the time we get to it, maybe, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes.
I think my brain is particularly broken from the way I engage with movies. Is just sometimes, for example, I saw the movie Swamp of the Ravens, which it got a Riff Tracks, maybe 10 plus years ago now. But they point out a lot of weird things with it, and I watched the movie straight after I watched the Riff Tracks, and I actually really liked it and followed it pretty well.
Okay.
And I'm not seeing anyone else saying that, so I think my brain may just be broken in this particular way that seems to affect people of Romantic and Latin descent.
I'm looking forward to exploring that broken brain. Like I said, I'm eager to learn more. I know that you've been doing some research already. I've been watching a few documentaries, and I've got some books on the way, courtesy of my local library, that'll help me kind of learn a little bit more as well. about this. I think, and you didn't mention it, but I do have a copy of A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, and I think there's some special features on that Blu-ray that I'll be able to watch to learn a little bit more as well, which is another Fulci film. It's not on the list, but it's one that was released when I was working at Dorado Films, and that was one that was part of their library. So, I was a little involved in that, not a lot, but
we had a consideration back then.
Yeah.
I think Fulci is an underappreciated figure in the history of genre cinema. He is often reduced to the zombie guy.
And I'm guilty of that.
Even when I first kind of entered into looking at European horror movies, I was introduced to Fulci as kind of a cut-rate Dario Argento. And I've just come to appreciate Fulci so much more than Argento. And we can get into that in the show.
Yeah.
But that's called Looking at Lucio. I'm writing a goofy theme song for it. And I'm looking forward to talking about the zombie movies and beyond with you.
And the other movies too. No, this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it as well. I love this film in general, and my experiences in Kuwait kind of further solidified my re-interest in zombie cinema. And there was one guy there that one made up, looked like a zombie straight out of Zombie 3. And I think from there, just the Fulci floodgates are reopening for me. So I'm eager to get back into some of these films and discover some ones that I've never seen before. And
much like the gates of hell themselves.
Yes. And I'm looking forward to it. That brings us to the end of this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of what we do here every week on this podcast. It means a lot to have you here, and it means even more if you share posts and retweet tweets and help spread the word and get more people involved with Monster Kid Radio, because the more Monster Kids, the better. I love talking about these movies with people. That I'm able to podcast about them just makes it even more special. Thank you for making me feel special this week and every week here on Monster Kid Radio. Big thanks to Robert for taking time out of his day for doing this as well. And I'm really excited about this new project that he and I have in the works. And really, he's kind of cooked this whole thing up. He came to me. It was his idea, his brainchild. And I'm excited to play in his wheelhouse a little bit more and exploring more of these movies by Lucio Fulci, taking a look at ones that I've already seen and discovering some new ones. And we'll see if I'm the same Derek when it's all over. You heard Robert say that he kind of broke his brain a little bit, or he's got a broken brain. Will my brain break by the time we're done watching these movies? Well, we'll find out. Stay tuned. As soon as we know more about when it's launching and where it's launching, I'll make sure it gets mentioned here on Monster Kid Radio. Head over to monsterkidradio.net for everything you need to know about the podcast. Everything is there. Links to our Facebook page and group, our Twitter page, our Discord, our Reddit, and our Patreon. We're trying real hard to figure out what we're going to do with our Patreon. It's been difficult for me over the years to come up with extra content and the time that I need to create that content for the Patreon. I just appreciate all of the patronage. Of course, it helps with keeping the lights on and paying our podcasting fees. And there are fees involved with hosting a podcast. So thank you for helping to cover those fees. Trying to figure out what we're going to do over there. But stay tuned. If you are a patron of any kind, we'll come up with something to drop before the end of the month. Last month, we did the video-only review of the movie Monster Mash, the new one with Michael Madsen. We'll come up with something later this month if you're a patron over at patreon.com/monsterkidradio. Also, I've got a new project in the works, something I'm excited about. I mentioned it a few times with a conversation with Robert Kelly. I'm a huge fan of pro wrestling, and I'm going to be launching a wrestling YouTube channel. Not going to do a lot of crossover between what I do over there and what I do here on Monster Kid Radio, although I might try to talk about some luchador stuff over there a little bit. Anyway, it's called the Suplex Stream, and there is a YouTube channel set up now. There's no videos there, but probably sometime next week there will be at least one, if not two videos posted there. There's also a Suplex Stream Facebook page and a Twitter, or I guess it's X now, but it's just weird to say X. So look up the Suplex Stream, give me a follow and a subscribe and all that. And as soon as we drop some pro wrestling information over there or YouTube videos or whatever it is we're going to do, you'll get it because you're subscribed and following. I appreciate the support. Of course, if you're not a fan of pro wrestling, don't worry. Like I said, there's not going to be a lot of crossover. Just, it's another outlet for me to express my love and passion for something that I love and am passionate about. So that will be coming here soon as well. Let's see, we've got that coming up. We got the Lucio Fulci project, following Fulci or looking into Lucio. I can't remember. Both titles have been floated. We got that project coming up with Robert Kelly. I've got some writing that is about to start happening again. And the Mail Order Zombie Journal. I've gotten a new piece from Dominique Lamses. It's going to be appearing in the journal, and it's a good one. Dominique is a phenomenal writer, and I wish that everything in the world aligned enough to allow Dominique to produce more writing, literature, content, fiction, nonfiction. She's phenomenal. And I am touched and honored that she sent this piece in. So we've got that to look forward to later this year as well. When is the Mail Order Zombie Journal going to launch? I've had a few people ask me about that. Maybe this fall? Kind of depends on how long it takes for other people to get their submissions in and how much I can generate to put in the book as well, or magazine or journal, whatever. But it's something that's ongoing, and I'm looking forward to making that happen as well. Other things are in the works, of course, including next week's episode of Monster Kid Radio. Now, I know it's May, which means technically it should be Lucha da Mayo here on the show. However, we just lost an icon. He was 98 years old when he left us, but Roger Corman sadly has passed away. And I want to do something special here on Monster Kid Radio to celebrate the man's life and legacy and what he means to us as film fans, as monster kids, as lovers of this stuff. I think it's probably safe to say that without Roger Corman's involvement in the film industry, well, there wouldn't be nearly as many movies for us to talk about, not just in the genre space or the monster movie space, but he started the careers, or at least helped start the careers of so many other people. Nicholson, Ron Howard, people like that, and so many others. If not for Roger Corman, where would we be? So I want to do a special episode dedicated to the life and films of Roger Corman, and this is where you come in. Now, I know not a lot of you call into the voicemail line, and that's okay, but this time I'm going to ask you to make it a point to do so. I'm going to ask Beth to mention the voicemail number again, but I would love to hear your Roger Corman thoughts. Tell me what your favorite Roger Corman movie is. Did you ever have a chance to meet him at a convention? What was that experience like? Is there a movie by Roger Corman that has touched you in a particular way? And it doesn't even have to be a public domain monster movie like we show over on the Twitch stream. It doesn't have to be a horror movie at all. It could be a science fiction movie, or it could be something completely different. It could be something that he produced as opposed to directing. But I would love for you to share your Roger Corman thoughts with us here, because next week we are doing an episode dedicated to Roger Corman. And then the week after that, we're going to do one more Luchador movie when I have Matt Rashley on the show to talk about his journey in the Luchador film universe. Just a cinematic experience. It's going to be fun. We're going to talk to Matt in 2 weeks. But yeah, next week, the Roger Corman stuff. So please send in your thoughts, comments, reviews, memories, whatever about Roger Corman next week. You can also send in an audio recording to our email address. Beth, why don't you hit them with our contact information again?
Have something you'd like to share with Monster Kid Radio? You can email the podcast at monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 360-524-2484.
Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you high and dry without Luchador content. In fact, if you follow us on Twitch, you already know that I have been running like a 10-hour, 12-hour, maybe even 14-hour block of Luchador movies over at twitch.tv/monsterkidradio. Go check that out. It's free, and I'm just going to leave that going nonstop through the rest of the month or until the power goes out again. We're going to be running this for everybody to check out. And in between the movies, I'm playing wrestling commercials, little ads here and there, little promos, that sort of thing. It's a lot of fun. They're all subtitled too, I believe. There might be one dubbed, but I believe they're all subtitled, so you get them in the original language. You want some Santo, you want some Blue Demon, you want some Mil Mascaras, you want some monsters, you want some spies. Well, you know where to go. Twitch.tv/Monster Kid Radio.
Monster Kid Radio is a Team Death production. All original content of Monster Kid Radio is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 Unported license. You can learn more about Team Death or other projects like Death Designs, Mail Order Zombie, Monster Kid Writer, and more at www.teamdeath.com. Remember, death is spelled D-E-T-H. That's teamdeath.com. Please rate and review Monster Kid Radio wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
Godzilla is copyright 2024, Billy Vanino, and you can find that on the Revolver EP over at billyvaninomx.bandcamp.com. Check out the entire EP, purchase the EP, and let them know that Monster Kid Radio sent you. My name's Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week. Adios. Or ciao, since it's Roger Corman.